Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Innovation, Cultural Transformation, and the Power of Co-Creation. This webinar is the final installment of a three-part series sponsored by the Emory Alumni Association and the Goizueta Business School in partnership with David Nour, CEO of the Nour Group. And David, thank you so much for being here. So for those of you who have missed it, don't worry. This is the third part, but we have parts 1 and 2 of this series housed on the Emory University YouTube channel. We have our Future of Work webinar and Maximizing Your Global Emory Network webinar. Both of those can be found on the Career Webinars playlist that has over 95 archived webinars from a variety of career and workplace experts. So I will send you an email afterwards with information there, as well as several other ways in which you can interact with David's content, both virtually, in person, on Emory's campus, and in some of our chapter cities. So there's a lot of great content after this. And thanks to those of you who sent in questions in advance. There will be time at the end of this webinar to ask David some questions. So please type those in as you think of them so that we can maximize his time here today. And I'm so glad, David, that we can see you as well as look at your slides. So a
Sarah,
bit more about our, oh no,
I
go
was
ahead,
going to
David.
say it's good to be back with you. These have been great sessions, and I appreciate you guys having me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm just going to say a little bit to brag about David before I turn it over to him in case he doesn't. He has spent the last 2 decades being a student of business relationships, and in the process, he has developed relationship economics, the art and science of becoming more intentional and strategic in the relationships one chooses to invest in. In a global economy that is growing increasingly disconnected, the Noir Group Inc. has worked with clients such as Hilton, Disney, KPMG, and over 100 other marquee organizations in driving profitable growth through unique return on their strategic relationships. David pioneered the phenomenon that relationships are the greatest off-balance sheet asset that any organization possesses. And he is the author of 10 books that have been translated into 8 languages, including the best-selling Relationship Economics, Revised, and the newly released Co-Create, which you can find through St. Martin's Press. So he is a global speaker, member of the Marshall Goldsmith MG100 Global Executive Coaches, a venture partner with EGL Holdings, and an adjunct professor now in the Executive Education Program at Emory University's Goizueta Business School. So I will share more about a great course that David will be leading in August, but we're delighted that he can join us here today. David, I'll now turn it over to you.
Sarah, thanks. I appreciate the introduction. It's good to have everybody back. Thanks for those of you who are with us live, and also appreciate all the folks that watched the recording afterwards. I know it's middle of the day, but I'm a big believer that there's never a good time for training development, so you got to kind of make time for these kinds of things. A couple quick housekeeping notes. I'm fairly active on various social networks. You see my ID, just typically add my name, David Nour. And I've been using Emory Proud as a hashtag for these sessions. So I'd encourage you to share ideas, insights, perspective with your audience you deem appropriate. Just a couple quick fun facts. I'm originally from Iran. I came to the U.S. in 1981 with a suitcase, $100. Didn't know anybody, didn't speak a word of English. Grew up in a large family. I have 42 first cousins. I'm the only child that's left with my parents. We traveled a ton when I was a kid. You could see I was very dapper at a very young age. I do live in Atlanta now, and those of you who either hail from a cold climate or live around Atlanta, you'd be great. You'd be happy to hear. Not only did we survive the 2008 blizzard, which is always fun to think about middle of the summer, but we're also home to the Atlanta United soccer team, which is a ton of fun. If you haven't been down there, if you haven't kept up, amazing attendance. Mercedes-Benz Stadium is an incredible experience. So it's a lot of hometown pride at the moment with the local soccer team. As Sarah was kind enough to mention, I've spent my life's work is around this idea of relationships are more than just a soft skill. They're quantifiable. They should be strategic, and as you'll see today, I think they can accelerate your ability to get things done. I consult. My passion is growth. My passion is really innovative approaches to go to market. How do we get beyond the noise and really think very differently, elevate what we're doing, how we're doing it? I speak globally. I coach a lot of executives. I'm a partner in a outsourced kind of corporate finance, kind of venture capital, private equity firm. help senior executives become better board candidates. And as Sarah mentioned, co-create was my book number 10. I have 7 more in my head in various stages. I've got them posted in front of me, and as you stare at them, you're like, that's a really bad idea. Let's not write about that one. Or that's interesting. I wonder if more people are thinking the same. So look for more info on these, but this is just a few of the ones that are out there. I have a young family, so I have a 16-year-old daughter who's an incoming junior, and a 14-year-old son who's an incoming freshman. Love them dearly. 2 crazy dogs. I'm an old Eagle Scout. My son's working on his Eagle Scout, and this is what I do for fun. And if that scares you, here's a more genteel version. But I don't know anybody that burns a candle, can burn the candle at both ends. So whatever, whether it's yoga for you or it's running or whatever, find ways to disengage, because especially since we're going to talk about innovation and cultural transformation, these things are difficult. They are emotionally draining, and you need you time. You got to find ways. You got to make time to get away, disengage. I talk about this as my digital detox, right? Most of us are so tied to our devices, and you know what? When I'm writing, nobody's texting me, nobody's calling, nobody's tugging at me. So we all do. You need that chance to get away. So as we've done before, if you've attended any of the previous sessions, I use an interactive tool, menti.com. So let's do that. Go to menti.com, and it's a lot more fun if you play along. And if you just open up a browser, again, menti.com, type in that code, menti.com, you type in that code, 9313931339. So let's do this together, and you'll see the first question, right? So go ahead and type it in, and live in person, it comes up. So there you go, director, great. Give me a general sense of what do you do, right? So go ahead and menti.com, 931339 is the code. A lot more fun if you play along, and just type in kind of what do you do, right? Managing partner, beautiful, great. All right, so just type in. We'll wait a couple more minutes for folks to get on, and we'll use this. Stop checking email, get off Facebook. We'll use this copywriter brand champion. That's kind of cool. All right, we'll use this throughout the session, and just kind of jump in and share with us, kind of get a better feel, kind of your role. So while others are getting on, your role. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. How old are you? Just type in your age. It's okay. I was showing Sarah that right here you go. You've seen these, right? So always fun. Just type in 42-ish. Love that. 30, very cool, right? So just goes feel 50, nice. Love it. Some people type it. I love the ish part, right? Roughly, right about there. Right. Beautiful. So that's great. Thanks for doing that. We'll keep coming back to that. I'll leave that up, and we can keep those of you that may want to jump in. But again, we're going to keep using this tool as we go. So in terms of agenda, I'd like to deliver as promised. We're going to talk about real innovation. We're going to talk about this idea of cultural transformation. It's the toughest challenge that I continue to see. It is not shortage of ideas. I'm not seeing shortage of capital. I'm not seeing shortage of a lot of other things that people perceive to be the big stumbling blocks. It really is the culture. I was meeting with this group of senior executives yesterday, and they really want to grow and scale this business unit, and they have some really good people. I'm just not sure the people in the right jobs, and I'm not sure and you kind of feel that culture as you walk in. I'm not sure it's innovative enough. They're not thinking. And again, I'll show you some examples shortly. But that cultural transformation is the biggest challenge I continue to see. And then I want to give you just some ideas, some practical, pragmatic ideas in terms of this idea of co-creation. So let's take them one at a time. I brought up Atlanta United. I've played soccer for a whole bunch of years. I want you to think of the market as a soccer match, or anything else, lacrosse, hockey, anything else that constantly moves. And I don't know if you've heard this, but I'm going to talk about soccer because that's kind of what I know. 90% of soccer is played when you don't have the ball. because of the dynamic movement of the players. Where should I be? How can I anticipate? We've heard the old Wayne Gretzky line about be where the puck's going to be, not where it's been, right? So the dynamic nature of all those moving parts is exactly what's happening in our markets. And last time I checked, none of us have a crystal ball. None of us have all the answers. A mentor's driven into me. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So I'm reminded, and this is really the gist of what I want you to think about today is I would submit your future isn't going to be created, it's going to be co-created. And it isn't bilateral, it is multiple stakeholders. So I want you to really think about this idea. And this is one of my favorite books. I've brought it up on these webinars before. It's written by a guy named Marshall Goldsmith. I've read this book 3 times. And every time a new idea pops out, and I keep thinking, oh, yeah, and again, mentor is driven into me. It's amazing how stupid I was 2 weeks ago, right? You read something, you're like, chapter 4, right? 20 habits that keep you from reaching the top. I've actually, I've got them taped right here in front of me on my desk. And, you look at this, it's like, oh, I got to stop doing that, right? So this is a classic case of you're going to have to constantly think about agility and nimbleness and how do I pivot and all the things again that we do and we learn to do as kids in a sports or a team environment. We somehow kind of forget when we come into our jobs and we're introduced to this kind of perfect execution box, right? So think about it a second. None of these existed back in 2006, right? We didn't have 4G. Can you imagine? Right? You remember the modem dial-ups we all used? We didn't have Nest. Now most of my thermostats and cameras, the house are all Nest products. We didn't have Instagram. We didn't have Spotify. We didn't have Airbnb. I mean, a lot of this stuff we didn't have iPads. And now look at the evolutions we're talking about. Look at just if I just take blockchain, right? And some of these things you may have not heard of, Brave or Steemit or Status or Ripple. But these are, and again, it's not just about cool new technology, it's about new ways of working. It's about exploring kind of new frontiers. By the way, I try to download one mobile app a week. Now I got to tell you, some of them are just complete waste of time and some money, and you're like, I don't get it. But that's the only way I'm going to learn. That's the only way I'm going to try new ideas. And that idea of innovation has to start with you. So again, when you get a chance, just look into some of these tools on the right and check out kind of how they do and what EOS is about. And Conti. These are kind of really interesting approaches to kind of, and if you look on the left, those are the things we're starting to do, and we do on a daily basis. It's part of our daily lives, right? So I'm curious, and again, let's go back to Menti. Let's go back to Menti, and I'll post along. What do you believe are the biggest barriers to innovation? Is it risk avoidance? Is it kind of, hey, let's just defend the status quo? Let's not do anything differently. Is it success? Things are working well. Don't rock the boat. Leadership, change management is not. I haven't seen that on many. It's not a required attribute of many CEO job descriptions. Internal systems, infrastructure. Is it staffing? The way we've always recruited. Is a lack of incentives between stakeholders. So what I want you to do is pick 3. Pick 3. What do you believe are the 3 most or the biggest barriers to innovation? Right? And here's the responses. Love it. Risk avoidance, right? Let's not do anything. Let's not go do anything different. Leadership. Wow. Right? Internal systems, decision making, right? You need 18 signatures to get anything done. Or, yeah, we'll get to that next month. Well, wait a minute. What's wrong with this afternoon? Right? So this is really critical. And again, for those of you who've just joined us late, we're using menti.com. The code is at the top of your page. This is an interactive polling tool that I use in my sessions. 931339. A lot more fun if you jump in with us. So I'll leave that up and come back. And again, you can see the live audience feedback. What do you believe are some of the biggest barriers to innovation? And unfortunately, I see a lot of these things. So in working with very diverse global clients. And again, Sarah at the top of the session was kind enough to mention a few of these. What we're seeing, and this is my work with Whatbox Innovation Partners, is a lot of these companies are going through transformation. And of all those companies that are going through transformation, unfortunately, a lot of them, 65%, are going to fail to meet that desired outcome, whatever that pain point was, whatever that hopefully wasn't some executives' flavor of the week, whatever was the impetus for initiating that effort, are gonna fail. Of those that succeed, only 25% claim some sort of success sustained over time. And by the way, adoption dramatically drops off when it leaves Mahogany Row, right, 50th floor, and comes down to the mailroom, right? And it just reiterates the executives, good intentions, good people, but the organizations really suffer from initiative fatigue. Hey, I just got back from a session and the speaker talked about blue ocean strategy. Let's go find a blue ocean. I don't know what, and again, great book. I just don't know what that means. And most people don't. Um, some leaders, the good news is it's not all, I don't want to depress the life out of you. Some leaders have figured this out, right? Companies that really have an innovative culture, as defined by agility and really stability, have a dramatically better chance, 70%, of being in the top quartile in terms of organizational health and performance. Top performing companies are 5 times more likely to embrace creativity and really intentionally foster trust and safety. It's okay for us to try. We're going to make a lot of bets. And some of them are not going to work out, but we're going to learn and we're going to apply those. Top performing companies are much more likely to value, recruit, develop, nurture this idea of diversity of thought. 91% of future leaders are recruited or promoted not because of their skills, not because of their knowledge or education or all that stuff is foundation. That's great, but can they deal with change as a core competency? Do they understand that change is omnipresent? So if you're serious about change, personally, professionally, if you think about kind of where you are, your current state, and where you're trying to get to, your future state, the strategies, the tactics that you push on that lever have a lot to do with your propensity, the organization's propensity to change. And that propensity is really all about skill set, mindset, tool set. And my colleague, Crystal Fernando at Whatbox Innovation Partners, done some really interesting thinking about this. And you really have to. And I'm glad you're here because we all have to hear it. We have to internalize it. We have to synthesize it. At some point, we believe it. And only when we believe in the process, we believe in kind of those efforts, will we start to live it. And when you live it, that's when real change happens. That's when you start to see not just pushing down on that seesaw on one end, but the other side actually starting to move. And by the way, you push on it once and let go, what does it do, right? It comes back to where it was versus sustaining that push is what gets you to the next level. So I recently spoke. I thought this would be interesting to you. I recently spoke at an industrial automation kind of space, and I asked them, what's the difference between these two? If you know anything about Grainger, they've been selling industrial products and they've been selling it online for a number of years, right? So this business model has been around. What you haven't seen and what this audience hadn't seen from Grainger are things like this. Have you seen the buttons? There's about a dozen of these around our house. You tie, you literally stick these buttons by the washing machine or dishwasher or where you buy dog food or right, and you push the button and it automatically is tied to your Amazon account and it adds it to your account and it shows up that afternoon or the next day. Have you seen this one, the Four Horsemen? It's amazing the diversity and diversified businesses they're really in. And again, if you look on the left-hand side, that's kind of part of our everyday lives. And the more you really study their business models, the more you really study the companies we believe are innovative, what they're doing is they're transforming themselves from a product to not just a smart product or smart connected products, but really systems and systems of systems. And that's where you get enormous amount of scale. That's where you get profitability. That's where you get market domination, right? So just again, many of you on the call may have heard of IoT, right? Look on the left-hand side, smart products, Nest. I've got a whole bunch of them. They're smart products. You start to integrate that into an optimized business, and you're optimizing your resources. You look into transformative business models. Amazon, in some ways, is that way. And when you start to connect these systems, now you get not only a ton of big data, but you get smart cities, and you get those sensors now driving behavior, and those sensors are now really transforming the way we live. I saw this this window, and it's exactly what the way you got to start thinking. And again, I want to give you some practical examples of what's really happening. So this is a company called VCount, and specifically, this is I was speaking at a retail event. They have a technology that counts uh, through cell phones traffic. Where are the hotspots? Where should your best selling products be? Where are people going? Where they're not going? Imagine this technology for trade shows. Imagine this kind of technology for anything where the physical presence is important to you. And we're getting to a point where we're not guessing anymore. We actually have real data. This is a fascinating one. Spice. This particular location is in Boston. Group of MIT guys partnered, co-created with an incredible chef to make these bowls. By the way, in that scenario, are you really going to argue about minimum wage? Because in that scenario, automation and technology, again, knowledge created the recipes and created that environment. But this is now, and again, there's several examples of this that are coming in the market. So what I want you to think about is this kind of stair step. Innovation for a lot of people doesn't make sense, and disruption is a huge leap. And what I really wanted to think about is the stair step. And Matt Ballantyne is a brilliant guy, and inspired this idea that iteration, if you think about it, is doing the same thing better. And if you get in the habit of constantly asking, is there a better way? What happens is you continue to iterate, and you'll stumble into innovation, which is doing new things. Wait a minute, why are we doing that again? And I love what if questions. What if we did it differently? What if we tried something differently? You do enough of new things, you'll stumble upon disruption. And I would submit disruption is doing new things that make the old obsolete. Now, I've got a fun example for you. One of my kids was asking about CC. They didn't know what CC stood for, and I said carbon copy. And again, I'm dating myself, but there's some more seasoned people on this call. Do you remember where we had to put carbon copy between papers, and what you wrote on the top came through, right? And their question was, well, why? Didn't you have email back then? So again, by iterating, we'll stumble into innovation. By continuing to think, how do we do things, new things, you start to identify opportunities to disrupt. And I'll show you an example of that in a second. But I also want to make this practical. I've got a brother who spent a whole bunch of years in the hospitality space, and he always talks about at check-in, if check-in goes well, we'll excuse almost anything else that happens. Conversely, if check-in doesn't go well, we'll find reasons to complain about something, right? So you kind of check in, and my concern with a lot of hospitality companies is they have no idea how that check-in went, right? And it's an individual interaction, and it would be very easy to fix something like this. Have you seen these things? If you fly through Atlanta airport, you'll see them by the bathrooms, but it's a very simple kind of, hey, keep it, the best ideas are simple, right? How was your experience? Green button, yellow was okay, red, not so good. And what if in that hotel check-in, by the time I got to my room, instead of the TV promoting the property I'm already in, right, or having my name, right, it got me, as soon as I got to my room, I got a call from the front desk manager that says, Mr. Nour, my name is John, I'm the front desk manager. I understand based on your input, your check-in didn't go as well. How can we fix it? How can I improve it? What can we do about that experience? Because after I leave, by the way, what do they ask when we check out? How was your stay? Fine, right? So what if, my point to you here is, what if we all changed that one question to, instead of how was your stay, what's the one thing we could have done to improve your experience with our property? Think of how many people stay in a property, 1,000 a month in a nice big one, 10,000 a month. Imagine the insights that hotel can gather about individual things they could do to improve that experience. Well, guess what? That's exactly what these room sharing applications do all the time. All the time. And for some reason it hasn't caught on to the physical space. And I can give you 1,001 excuses of why we can't do that or we don't know how to do that. And it takes a spark. And that's, we'll talk about that. That's where co-creation can come from. So let's go back to Menti. Let's go back to Menti. I want to make sure again you get your money's worth from this session. How would you describe your culture? Since we're going to talk about culture next, just type in for me, how would you describe your culture? Right? Um, Collaborative, love that. Family, that's kind of cool, right? How would you describe the culture? Culture of the whatever organization you're in now. Confused, I love it, right? By the way, I can't see who's responding, so this is a perfect place to be candid, right? You can't be candid with yourself. Who are you going to be candid with? Collaborative, confused, evolving. That's a good one, right? Somebody else said the other day, work in progress, right? Hopeful. That's fantastic. That's great, right? So just kind of keep adding to this. Keep adding to this, and those again, jump in with your responses. But I want to come back to this, and we'll talk more about it. So let's switch gears to this idea of cultural transformation. As I said earlier, unfortunately, it is the biggest challenge I continue to see with clients I'm working with. And by the way, have you seen this? Innovation killer org chart. You've got the chief idea killer, unfortunately, at the top. VP of no, we can't do that. Nope, 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 nope. VP of status quo. Listen, it works. Why do you want to mess with it? VP of state of course. Hey, listen, we've been in business. I literally heard this. We're a 120-year-old company. It's obviously working for us. Why should we do that? Conversation, didn't last very long. And it's just, life's too short for me to try to convince you that what made you successful in 1800s isn't going to be what makes you successful in 2018, right? And then you've got the director of erroneous reporting and bureaucracy and rigidity. And by the way, the manager of new growth ideas is vacant if you want to apply. This is the other one from the Gardner Symposium that I love. The biggest threat to innovation is internal politics and organizational culture which doesn't accept failure and or doesn't accept ideas from outside and or cannot change. So if you think about culture, it's beyond just important. Everybody talks about how important culture is. I would submit it's significant because it touches almost every part of, it's the fundamental DNA of that organization. And there's a lot of good stuff out there about communicate openly and work in teams and celebrate success, and this stuff is important. Don't misconstrue my comment. And there's also some really interesting thinking about what do we need as individuals, right? We need to feel secure, we need to be able to relate, we need self-esteem. And then organizationally, what are some things that have to happen? But here's what I would submit to you is the challenge. We talk about a lot of the visible stuff, right? Vision, strategy, structure, services, products. If you really think about the way we really get things done, is the proverbial stuff below the surface, the iceberg that we don't see, right? It's loyalty, it's expectations, it's appetite, propensity for change. By the way, it's commitment, it's ethics. So the really tough part is the unconscious. I've got a good friend, Molly Chang, who talks about hearing all the voices and really speaking the truth, and leaders who get away from. And she talks about we can keep working in soul sucking companies, or we can start to have real candid conversations about what works and what doesn't. My point about really this idea of cultural transformation is you can have the most amazing ideas, and unfortunately I see this all the time, great ideas in companies that never go anywhere because the culture isn't willing and isn't willing to embrace it, right? And I would submit to you that innovative ideas thrive amongst relationships. Unfortunately, we tend to put relationships in these boxes, in these buckets, and we talk about this, the transactional, departmental, functional versus this messy kind of web of relationships. And by the way, amazing ideas, instead of, you used to be, you know, playing poker. That's my idea. I'm going to keep that close to my chest. Versus now, the best ideas are ones that are socialized and they take off in big ways. And there's a reason companies are creating these types of spaces. A client recently asked me, and I'm going to go out to LA and see them, and they said, "Could you come and do a kind of a fireside chat at TEDx kind of a salon?" And I said, "Well, are we talking about a couple hundred people?" And they said, "No, no, no. It." And they sent me a picture of one of the previous one. Look how engaging that looks. There's no death by PowerPoint. There's no. It's a conversation. And by the way, I said, so what is, what is, I'm just really curious now. What does your office look like? And they sent me this, and I'm thinking, um, what is the cafeteria? No, no, no. That's their office. That's the way they work. Because in that open environment, people travel, and we used to have. You remember I've worked with some of the big four guys. You remember the hotel room kind of setup, and it was a cube, and there was an office, and you kind of sit there by yourself, scared, staring at a wall, or maybe you had a window, and versus that. So I think culture is something that we all have to become a lot more intentional about. And yeah, you can talk about open door policies, or again, you can create environments like this. So if you think of the how and the why of our relationships, there are three types: personal, people like us, friends and all; functional, we put up with because we work with. Most people have plenty of the first two, not enough strategic relationships. Not enough relationships that elevate our thinking, elevate our perspective. We also build relationships for a very specific reason. You do it for a reason. That's often a transaction. Put several reasons together and you get a season. Again, plenty of people do this. We don't think about relationships enough in terms of a lifetime. And in many ways, I would submit your culture is your brand. Your culture is what people are going to talk about. There are no relationships between business cards or logos or buildings. It really is that culture that makes you attractive to potential employees, attractive to ideas taking off, attractive to not just ideation, but experimentation and implementation, right? So what we're seeing is there's this fundamental revolution in how organizations function, and it is at its core is talent. I've respectfully said to several friends that I don't work with HR, and by that I mean there's some great people. God bless them. Their best days are when nothing goes wrong, right? But a lot of tactical HR benefits and payroll that isn't kind of my focal area. But I got to tell you, I love this idea of talent because it's at the epicenter of really the evolution of a company. And if you think about talent, there's two forces: technological and digital productivity, and shifts in the ways we generate business value that are really driving this demand for relevant talent. We need people that get those two rows and can quickly come in and adapt to them. Compare and contrast that lens with what's happening in the market. So there's all kinds of shifts in resource allocation. There's changing workforce culture and values. The days of our parents working at some company for all the careers we all know is long gone, right? Now I really, it's more of the gig economy. It really is, I want to pivot and I'm bored and I don't want to be in the same job for a year, much less 2 to 5 years, right? So there's this supply of thinking talent that's also in demand. So we don't need more and more companies. I would submit, again, you saw some of the automation examples. We need less of the mundane. We need more of people that can think. And the example I want to give you is one of our clients has brought in a woman, 32 years old, from Amazon. And Claire has done more in 6 months than these guys were able to do in the previous 2 years. Why? She doesn't come with all the baggage that's there. And by the way, most of the executives tell me, they've been in that business for 30 years. I love what I love Claire. She comes as, sorry, why do we do that again? And what if we did this? And here's, I want to, and she's got the air cover from her executive to go try a bunch of ideas. And because she creates results from those ideas, she's gained credibility, momentum, support, resources, now a team, now P&L, right? For just creating a lot of interesting bets in essence. So what does thinking talent look like? I love this. It's actually a picture of a plaque, right? Please exit the building if it's on fire before tweeting about it. Just things that people need to know, right? Or have you seen this one? Are you concerned about increase in artificial intelligence? No, but I'm concerned about a decrease in real intelligence. We don't make enough time to think. And I'm reminded of that movie Evan Almighty, with Steve Carell and Morgan Freeman's in there, and there's a specific line, and he says, if you ask God for more patience, he doesn't give you more patience, he gives you opportunities to be patient. So you want thinking talent. What are we doing to create environments for people to think? Because I don't believe we make enough time to think. I'm having this argument with the headmaster of our kids' school of critical thinking. Why isn't that a course? Why isn't that integrated into all the traditional curriculum that they teach? And don't give me the state requirements, right? I'm not paying for that school to just shove state requirements through. It's how do we help these kids really think very differently about the jobs they're gonna interview for years from now, not kind of where we've been. The World War One factory of pushing these kids every 50 minutes to the next box, right? So, by the way, this is something else that my dad drove into me. You know, people only take pride in jobs they love. Unfortunately, I see it all the time. I see it all the time of great people in the wrong jobs. I'm trying to tell most of the executives I work with, life is too short to wake up every day and hate the job that you've got. Well, why? Because you get this thing called a paycheck every couple of weeks, and I'm not minimizing the need for that security. I'm just saying there's a lot of other places where you can get the same security and do the things you love. And obviously, Marcus Buckingham and a lot of other people have talked about this, the strength movement, and but pride is another critical telltale sign of are they really excited about the job that they've gotten, the job that they're doing. So what we've seen is also innovation, and we talk about this cultural transformation. It isn't it's not really hard if you think about it. It's complex. So if you think of a factory assembly line where it's the right answer and it's sequential, and this is also why franchises work really well, right? Open a door at 7, turn on the oven at 7:05, put the cookie dough in at 7:15, put the samples out in the lobby at 8. It is sequential, it is cookie cutter, right? You think of something more complicated, heart surgery, rockets, technology design. Again, there's typically some precedent. There's multiple answers. There's specialized expertise. The cause and effect, subtle, but they're discoverable, right? So we get the complicated. The complex, raising a child, right? This cultural transformation, innovation, things we're talking about, there's no one right answer. There's no, you need multifaceted expertise. There's self-organization. You've got interdependence, all right, to evolve. So, and by the way, the Economist, talks a lot about the fourth industrial revolution, kind of what we're going through now. Look at the industries that's going to dramatically impact. I'm doing a webinar in a couple of weeks on innovation in healthcare, or innovation lessons in healthcare, and that's one of the biggest areas where automation and we believe technology is going to have a huge impact. If you're in any of these industries, energy, infrastructure, finance, education, fourth industrial revolution is going to dramatically impact, if not disrupt, these industries. Are you watching it happen to you, or are you proactively finding opportunities to get in? So I would submit, in many ways, the advantage is going to come to those that can adapt and do it in a creative way. So have you seen this one? Who wants change? Everybody. Who wants to change? Right? Nobody. Who wants to lead the change? And the room empties. Or this one. Listen, instead of really trying anything new, we should absolutely play it safe, right? And continue our slow decline into obsolescence. We think it's a funny cartoon. Unfortunately, I see it, and most of us see it all the time. I was in New York City, and specifically in LaGuardia, in the Delta Sky Club. Look over, if you travel, if you're there, look over the window. It overlooks, I need to put a picture of it here. It overlooks the taxi line. And it is this massive parking lot of a whole bunch of taxis that are lined up just sitting there. Meanwhile, Uber is just going through, right? the front outside of the airport, and those taxi guys are still sitting there. It's let's do the same thing and drive that business into obsolescence, right? It's also important to point out this idea of purposeful, provocative leadership. Now, when you say provocative, a lot of people think of schoolyard bullies. A lot of people think about, um, in your face. That's not what I'm talking about. If you know who this guy is, Kevin Plank is the CEO of Under Armour. They've struggled a little bit financially recently, but interviewed him for the book, and he talked a lot about his biggest challenge last couple of years was convincing his leadership team and his board to invest $1 billion in 3 different tech companies, because Under Armour at $4 billion in revenue can't compete in the same playing field with Nike at $30 billion in revenue, right? So provocative, purposeful leadership is critical in innovation. It's critical in cultural transformation. And it's as much about tenacity and grit and resolve. It's about resolve to see that vision come through fruition, despite of, if you think of flying, headwind and turbulence, right? To turn those into and identify places where we can get tailwind and moving those ideas forward. So let's go back to Menti. Let's go back to Menti again. I want to ask you a couple questions. I want you to really think about your current risk, and this is a fun lever, right? So are you under margin pressures? So are you under margin pressures? And again, what's the importance of margins, right? And the business impact. Is there a lack of focus? Again, importance of it and impact. Digital talent, skills imbalance in your organization. Is there strategic importance and business impact? Lack of capital, is that an issue? Right? Lack of succession, right? Are we, and it's not just at the top, but in other places, are we doing enough to right? And when you hit submit, this is what you'll see in looking at your risk, right? If you look at the risk of your organization, I want you to pick, right? Beautiful. We got some people responding, right? Margin. I've always said no margin, no mission, right? No margin, no mission. Lack of focus, priority on innovation. Digital talent, the skills imbalance. Do we have enough people thinking about our business very differently? Lack of capital. Are you lacking capital in your business or resources? That's another way to think about it. Lack of succession planning. Are we giving the next generation enough opportunities to lead, right? So yeah, just again, use the levers and hit submit, and we'll see your responses here. And of course, after this, I have a very serious question I want to ask, a very serious question. So a couple more minutes. I want to make sure your vote gets counted. Want to jump in with your response. Again, we're talking about business impact and strategic importance. Minute or two, right? Going once, going twice. All right, very important question. Are you having fun? Are you having fun? Because if you're not having fun, there we go. I like it. Are you having fun? And right after this, I want to show you. Thank you. I always tell my audience, if you're not having fun, I'm leaving. I'm done. So are you having fun? And then check out this one. I don't know about you. I love karma. I saw this and I had to share it with you. The man who just drove into the parking space I was waiting for and told me to F off has arrived for his interview with me. Can you imagine? Karma is real. Karma is all around us. I just saw that and I cringed, right? Can you imagine? Oh my gosh, karma is real. Karma happens all the time. All right, so the last part of our time together, this idea of co-creation. So as I write books, as I think about ideas, and again, I've got several in front of me that I'm working on now, it's really a question that kind of keeps gnawing at me, that I kind of just struggle with. And for co-create, it was all about how will you compete? And more importantly, if you keep doing what you've been doing, I'm not sure you're going to be relevant. If you keep doing things that are just a little bit better, you'll be momentary. Only when you keep thinking about how will we compete in the future? How will we gain market share? How will we attract talent? That's how you remain relevant. And I love this idea of human-centered design. Again, Sarah was kind enough to talk about. I'm going to teach this strategy visualization course with the executive education program at Emory, August 28, 29. And we're going to talk a lot about this, which is, if you think of the intersection of technology and business and design and people, at the center of that is really this idea of creating user experiences, and not just mediocre, but exceptional user experiences. And what I need you to hear is the last exceptional experience you had, we all have, really becomes the foundation for all of our future expectations. Let me say it again. The last great experience that you have becomes the floor, becomes the minimal, becomes the foundation of all of our future expectations. So if I order something from Amazon and it arrives this afternoon on back of an Uber car, right? That's what I'm going to expect for almost everything else. And when somebody tells me that's going to take 3 weeks, I'm like, can I get it from Amazon, right? Because Prime gets it here tomorrow, right? And I would submit to you that co-creation at its essence is about this idea of an experience journey. Now, you can substitute customer for different stakeholders, for internal, external investors, people talent you're trying to attract. Everybody goes through an experience journey. And at the center of it is evaluation. We're always evaluating, and we go and discover, and we consider options. We come back to evaluation, we buy, and not just products and services, but information and credibility and repute. And we come back and we use it, and we come back to evaluation. So brand critical, right? The value proposition, notice I didn't say the cheapest option, the value proposition critical, and how you fit in my daily life really is what creates my customer experience. I've never understood why hotels call us a guest. Last time I checked, I stay in that hotel one night in a week that I travel. So aren't they a guest in my journey? What if you change that lens, and how would that change your perspective if you did that? By the way, I saw this and I loved it. Netflix didn't kill blockbusters, those late fees did. You remember driving like crazy to get that movie back so we wouldn't have to pay the $1.50 late fee? Right? Amazon isn't killing retail, it's poor experiences that are doing it. So the experience is really the foundation for Spark to co-create. And the path begins. Do you remember playing dodgeball as a kid? Right? If a ball was coming at you, you didn't just stand there and get hit. What did we do? We pivoted, right? We moved. That's exactly what you have to learn, because disruption is all around us. It is going to continue happening, from more nimble competitors to new regulations to changes in tax laws to whatever it is. It is going to be all around us. And the sooner you can learn as an individual, as a team, as an organization to pivot, the more you build that muscle memory. And we see this all around us. How many of you, I'm dating myself, you remember walking up to our TVs and turning the knob with the rabbit ears up top, right? We had what, 3, 5 channels? How many channels do you have now? Right? Thousands. Do I really want to sit there and flip through 1,000 channels? No. So this idea of a remote, I would submit, has gone through several iterations. Remember we talked about doing the same thing better? Well, more recently, that remote app is on my tablet, and I could argue that's innovation, right? Because I don't physically need the remote anymore. But when my TV is tied to my Amazon account, and my Hulu account, and my Netflix account, and it sees what I buy, what I watch, when I watch it, and it starts to recommend, I think based on your preferences, you would like episode 3 of season 4 of this show. That's disruption, because I no longer even need the concept of a remote, because I don't want to flip through 1,000 channels. And by the way, if I stop watching that show 20 minutes in, it realizes it didn't meet my expectations, and it learns in what it recommends the next time. So, and if you think that's Jetsons, I'm trying to tell you, this is happening now. Predictive becomes incredibly valuable. The other thing I talk about in co-creation is, again, none of us have all the answers. So the sooner you get used to this idea of adaptive innovation, right? Think of agile development has been around for a long time. Think of lean startup has been around for a while now. This is all about iteration. This is all about, version 1 is better than version none. So this is a Silicon Beach conference. Was an interesting conference where all the presenters were under the age of 25. Do they have some insights? Are they doing some interesting things we could all learn from? Yeah. And by the way, speed and agility matters more than ever before. matters more than ever before. So, right, back to the last slide a second. Um, Disruptive innovation on the left-hand side, how complex something is. Velocity, right, the x-axis. You got to evaluate, you got to identify, you got to organize. That's where a lot of collaboration comes in, and that can be strategic, and it's about knowledge. But at the end of the day, right, minimally viable products and proof of concepts and what I talk about in the co-create pilots and prototypes are all about experimentation and all about testing new ideas. A lot of times it might be innovating a new process or new go-to-market approach, but it's about getting out and doing it. You can overthink these things. The simpler, the better. Brilliance really is simple things that are all around us that nobody's thought of before, right? So the other thing I'm a big believer of is visual. This is, again, and this is the class I'm going to teach. Again, exec ed is this idea of taking interesting ideas and visually bringing them to table. So when you present, you're presenting an idea, you're presenting a journey, and it's a story that everybody can understand. We've been doing this since caveman days, right? So let's go back to Menti. Let's go back to Menti. Let's go back to Menti. Give me one takeaway. One takeaway. Just type it in from what we've shared so far. One takeaway. Just type in one takeaway. And I'm going to give Sarah time to ask a few questions too. So one takeaway from all that I've shared. Just type that in. Let's see what of all that I've shared, what's resonated with you. One takeaway. There we go. Culture is a key. Absolutely. Skill balance, diversity. Nice. Value barriers of culture. Absolutely. It's the significance of that culture, right? It's another good one. Culture is your brand. Absolutely. Right. Think of when you walk up to somebody else's office. What's your impression? We make that up in the first 7 to 10 seconds. We spend the next 10 minutes cementing that impression. Right. So this is critical. So I think I just got a couple of quick spots. So yeah, I want to wrap up with 4 kind of operating principles. Relationships are about empowerment, not hierarchy. Right? How do we create environments where people get a chance to interact and socialize ideas in a lot of different places? Journey, that experience matters more than ever before. Creating, tracking, measuring each step of that experience and creating on-ramps. Your value as an individual, as a team, as an organization has to evolve. It has to change. And you got to find ways to align, you bridge the silos inside and out. So as Sarah mentioned, these have been 3 webinars that I've put together so far. There's a lot more ideas, and I'd love to continue the conversation on just nourgroup.com. By the way, if you just go to nourgroup.com, upcoming webinars, I am doing a few more this innovation lessons from healthcare. We're going to do one on global talent, project management is, and by the way, I do webinars and things that interest me, but the common theme is relationships, right? Innovation and profitable growth. Middle East, North Africa is growing a big way. You'll go, if you're interested in board and governance, this is an interesting topic. And then this is something else that I've printed and put in front of me. The illiterate of the 21st century is not going to be those who can't read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. One last mentee before we, how would you rate emoji style, the quality of this webinar, right? Value, the how would you use emojis to share with us? I hope you didn't get distracted or you were bored, but just jump in with emoji. That, thank you. I can put this to work. Nice, all good. Thank you. This is great stuff. So while we do that, there is my contact info. Sarah, let me turn it over to you for some of the questions.
All right, great. Thank you so much, David. So, first question, what are your tips and techniques for a transformative leader to use as they sort through their employees and identify the keepers?
So a lot to unpack there. I'm a big believer of look for observable behavior. So let me give you 3. Look for observable behavior. Who is not the devil's advocates, which is a good thing, by the way, but are there people that are always thinking about better ways, different ways of doing things? We always used to call them, oh, don't disrupt. I just need you to, sometimes I need you to follow the execution model. Other times I absolutely are open to ideas. So look for observable behavior. Who's constantly thinking about that? Number two, I've always appreciated being around lifelong learners. Who's always reading? Who's always attending conferences? Who's always absorbing that knowledge like food? And then look for collaborative behaviors. Who's may have a great idea, but is bringing in different thinking because of what they don't know. They don't know, right? So those three. Who's got interesting ideas on a consistent basis, not one-offs? Who's constantly learning, growing, right? They realize they need to evolve, and who's bringing in interesting, different perspective ideas outside of their own.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you. And what role do you think companies will play in training and continuing education for their employees?
Sure, sure. So I'm a big believer of what I call the Hollywood talent model. I'm starting to see more and more of this. The days of guaranteed employment are long gone. If you think of that in Hollywood, very few people actually work for the studio. The studio will license a screenplay, and they pick an executive producer who then finds a director, and the director finds the front of the camera talent, behind the camera talent, and in a casting kind of role, they're always asking who's the best actor for this role in this movie. We're not talking about the quality of that individual. Who's the best actor for this role in this movie? So if you think of companies doing that, your training and development more and more is going to fall on your own shoulder. And I've always said, if you're waiting for HR to do that for you, I think you're going to continue to struggle. So and the reason I like lifelong learners, they have this insatiable appetite to learn. And the reason I brought up the exec ed course, is because here it is. If you go to executive education, it's strategy visualization, right? It's come and learn about these kinds of things because they're going to help elevate your thinking and elevate your perspective.
All right, wonderful. And we do have a question from someone about accessing the webinars on your website. So
Yeah.
those are available
Yes.
under
Yeah.
resources, I believe.
If you just go to nourgroup.com/upcoming dash webinars, you'll see all of them listed. There's a description, and you can just register. They're all free, by the way. So nourgroup.com/upcoming dash webinars, and you can just register there.
Okay, great. And all right, I've sent that out in the chat area as well. So, any final thoughts on telling your story and how companies, who they should look to, maybe professionals like yourself or others, to help them tell their story since that's growing increasingly important?
Yeah, I tend to think of three-legged stools, so let me give you three. Number one, unfortunately, way too many company stories are unnecessarily complicated. The best stories we always hear are the simple ones, right? So constantly that people, if you think of, let me give you this analogy. If you think of the world's most popular website, Google, right? It's a box, right? That's it. In that box, we tell it what we're looking for, in some ways, who or where we are and how it can help, right? What if more of our stories were just that box? How are you relevant to me? How are you of interest to me? And again, another analogy I like to use is, have you ever tried pushing a rope? It doesn't work. So instead of just constant push marketing, push advertising, push management, push leadership, what if we created market gravity? What if we created a pull? So number one, simplify the story. Number two, socialize it. Get it out there. Talk to people about it. Here's what we do. Does that make sense? Because if you have to explain it, it's overcomplicated. It is too complicated. Simplicity goes a long way. Socialize it. The other thing is, I'm a big believer of, we all have vulnerabilities. Ever since we were kids, we're taught to not talk about those, and that's not for public consumption. And I'm trying to tell my audiences as often as I can, in this dynamic market, you got to talk about your vulnerabilities. You got to talk about, where are we most susceptible to something going wrong, something not working. So those vulnerabilities often become, again, the spark for you to really think about, how do we do this differently? How do we take it to market differently? And the more you socialize those with the right relationships that demonstrate a vested interest in your success, they're much more likely to come and say, hey, have you thought about this, or look at this, or let me send you this. And it's amazing the different parallel universes we all live in based on our experiences, based on our knowledge, based on our relationships.
All right. Well, thank you so much, David. We appreciate your time here. And again, I will follow up with the recordings of all 3 of these webinars so you can revisit them. And again, there's a wealth of content on David's website. So we'll share that out. And for those of you who are able to come to campus and are interested in executive education, there will be an offering at the end of August. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay tuned for future webinars and in-person events coming your
Thanks,
way.
everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Sarah. Take care.